Okay, this is part 49 of Nos4a2. By the road. When Wayne went out half an hour later to walk Hooper, to get away from his mother and her mood of pressurized unhappiness. The folder was sitting on the top step, all the papers neatly shuffled back into it. He glanced over his shoulder through the still open door, but his mother was up in the kitchen out of sight. Wayne shut the door. He bent and picked up the folder, opened it, and glanced at a tiny stack of printouts. Alleged serial killer, morbid vandals, Boeing engineer vanishes. He folded the sheaf of paper into quarters and put it in the back pocket of his shorts. He shoved the empty folder down behind the hedges planted along the front of the house. Wayne was not sure he wanted to look at them, and at just 12 years old, he was still not self-aware enough to know he had already decided to look at them, that he had made his decision the moment he shoved the folder out of sight behind the hedge. He crossed the lawn and sat on the curb. He felt as if he were carrying nitroglycerin in his back pocket. He stared across the street at a lawn of wilted yellowing grass. The old guy who lived over there was really letting his yard go. The guy had a funny name, Sig Dezote, and a room full of little model soldiers. Wayne had wandered over the day of Graham's funeral, and the old guy had showed them to him, being nice. He had told Wayne that once upon a time his mother, Vic, had painted a few of his figurines. "Your mother hoff a fine brush even then," he said, with an accent like a Nazi. Then his nice old wife had made Wayne a glass of frosted iced tea with slices of orange in it that had tasted just about like heaven. Wayne thought about going over there to look at the old guy's soldiers again. It would be out of the heat, and it would take his mind off the printouts in his back pocket that he probably shouldn't look at. He even got as far as pushing himself up off the curb and getting ready to cross the street, but then he looked back at his own house and sat down again. His mother wouldn't like it if he wandered off without saying where he was going, and he didn't think he could head back into the house and ask permission yet. So he stayed where he was and looked at the wilting lawn across the street and missed the mountains. Wayne had seen a landslide once, just last winter. He had been up above Longmount with his father to tow a Mercedes that had slid off the road and down an embankment. The family that had been in the car were shaken up but unhurt. They were a normal family, a mom, a dad, 2 kids. The little girl even had blonde pigtails. That's how normal they were. Wayne could tell just looking at them that the mom had never been in a mental asylum and that the father didn't have stormtrooper armor hanging in his closet. He could tell that the children had normal names like John and Sue as opposed to bearing names lifted from a comic book. They had skis on the roof of the Mercedes, and the father asked Lou if he took Amex, not American Express, Amex. Within minutes of meeting them, Wayne loved the whole family with an irrational fierceness. Lou sent Wayne down the embankment with the hook and the winch line, but as the boy edged toward the car, there came a sound from high above, a splintering crack loud as a gunshot. Everyone looked up into the snowy peaks, the sharp-edged Rockies rising above them through the pines. As they stared, a white sheet of snow, as wide and long as a football field, came loose and began to slide. It was half a mile to the south, so they were in no danger. After the first crack of its letting go, they could barely even hear it. It was no more than a low roll of distant thunder, although Wayne could feel it. It registered as a gentle thrum in the ground beneath him. That great shelf of snow slid a few hundred yards and hit the tree line and exploded in a white blast, a tidal wave of snow 30 feet high. The father who had the Amex lifted his boy up and set him on his shoulders to watch. "We are in the wild now, little guy," he said, while an acre of mountain-top forest was smothered under 600 tons of snow. "Isn't that a goddamn?" Lou said and looked down the embankment at Wayne. His father's face shone with happiness. "Can you imagine being underneath it? Can you imagine all that shit coming down on you?" Wayne could, and did, all the time. He thought it would be the best way to die, wiped out in a brilliant crash of snow and light, the world roaring around you as it slid apart. Bruce Wayne Carmody had been unhappy for so long that it had stopped being a state he paid attention to. Sometimes Wayne felt that the world had been sliding apart beneath his feet for years. He was still waiting for it to pull him down, to bury him at last. His mother had been crazy for a while, had believed that the phone was ringing when it wasn't, had conversations with dead children who weren't there. Sometimes he felt she had talked more with dead children than she ever had with him. She had burned down their house. She spent a month in a psychiatric hospital, skipped out on a court appearance, and dropped out of Wayne's life for almost 2 years. She spent a while on book tour, visiting bookstores in the morning and local bars at night. She hung out in LA for 6 months, working on a cartoon version of Search Engine that never got off the ground and a cocaine habit that did. She spent a while drawing covered bridges for a gallery show that no one went to. Wayne's father got sick of Vic's drinking, Vic's wandering, and Vic's crazy, and he took up with the lady who had done most of his tattoos, a girl named Carol who had big hair and dressed like it was still the 80s. Only Carol had another boyfriend, and they stole Lou's identity and ran off to California, where they racked up a $10,000 debt in Lou's name. Lou was still dealing with creditors. Bruce Wayne Carmody wanted to love and enjoy his parents, and occasionally he did. But they made it hard, which was why the papers in his back pocket felt like nitroglycerin, a bomb that hadn't exploded yet. He supposed if there was any chance it might go off later, he ought to have a look, figure out how much damage it could do, and how best to shelter himself from the blast. He pulled the papers out of his back pocket, took a last secretive glance at the house, and folded the pages open onto his knee. The first newspaper article featured a photo of Charles Talent Mannix, the dead serial killer. Mannix's face was so long it looked like it had melted a little. He had protruding eyes and a goofy overbite and a bald, bulging skull that bore a resemblance to a cartoon dinosaur egg. This man, Charlie Mannix, had been arrested above Gun Barrel almost 15 years ago. He was a kidnapper who transported an unnamed minor across state lines, then burned a man to death for trying to stop him. No one knew how old he was when they locked him up. He didn't thrive in jail. By 2001, he was in a coma in the hospital wing of the Supermax in Denver. He lingered like that for 11 years before passing away last May. After the article was mostly bloodthirsty speculation. Mannix had a hunting cottage outside Gun Barrel where the trees were hung with hundreds of Christmas ornaments. The press dubbed the place the Sleigh House, which managed 2 puns, neither of them any good. The article implied he had been imprisoning and slaughtering children there for years. It mentioned only in passing that no bodies had ever been discovered on the grounds. What did any of this have to do with Victoria McQueen, mother Bruce Wayne Carmody? Nothing, as far as Wayne could see. Maybe if he looked at the other articles he would figure it out. He went on. Alleged serial killer's corpse vanishes from morgue was next. Someone had broken into St. Luke's Medical Center in Denver, slugged a security guard, and made off with dead old Charlie Mannix. The body snatcher had wiped a Trans Am from the parking lot across the street, too. The third piece was a clipping from a paper in Louisville, Kentucky, and didn't have a damn thing to do with Charlie Mannix. It was titled, Boeing Engineer Vanishes, Local Mystery Troubles Police, IRS. It was accompanied by a photograph of a tanned and wiry man with a thick black mustache leaning against an old Rolls-Royce, elbows resting on the hood. Bruce frowned his way through the story. Nathan Dementor had been reported missing by his teenage daughter, who had returned from school to find the house unlocked, the garage open, a half-eaten lunch on the table, and her father's antique Rolls-Royce gone. The IRS seemed to think Dementor might have skipped out to evade prosecution for incoming tax evasion. His daughter didn't believe it, said he was either kidnapped or dead, but there was no way he would have run out on her without telling her why and where he was going. What any of this had to do with Charles Talent Mannix, Wayne couldn't see. He thought maybe he had missed something, wondered if he ought to go back to the start and reread everything. He was just about to flip back to the first of the photocopies when he spotted Hooper squatting in the yard across the street, dropping turds the size of bananas in the grass. They were the color of bananas, too, green ones. "Aw, no," Wayne cried. "Aw, no, big guy." He dropped the papers on the sidewalk and started across the street. His first thought was to haul Hooper out of the yard before anyone saw, but the curtain twitched in one of the front windows of the house across the street. Someone, the nice old guy or his nice old wife, had been watching. Wayne supposed the best thing he could do was go over there and make a joke out of it, ask if they had a bag he could use to clean up the mess. The old guy, with his Dutch accent, seemed like he could laugh at just about anything. Hooper rose, unfolding from his haunch. Wayne hissed at him. "You're bad. You're so bad." Hooper wagged his tail, pleased to have Wayne's attention. Wayne was about to climb the steps to the front door of Sigmund de Zot's house when he noticed shadows flickering along the lower edge of the door. When Wayne glanced at the spy hole, he thought he saw a blur of color and movement. Someone stood 3 feet away right on the other side of the door, watching him. "Hello?" he called from the bottom of the steps. "Mr. de Zote?" The shadows shifted at the bottom of the door, but no one acknowledged him. The lack of a response disquieted Wayne. The backs of his arms prickled with chill. "Oh, stop it. You're just being stupid because you read those scary stories about Charlie Mannix. Go up there and ring the bell." Wayne shook off his unease and began climbing the brick steps, extending one hand for the doorbell. He did not observe that the handle of the door was already beginning to turn, the person on the other side preparing to swing it open.